would like to begin the meeting with the pledge of allegiance. Please stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, with liberty and justice for all.
I see that we have a quorum, and I'd like to outline a little bit about what this meeting is for. We're here to receive some information from the general manager and engineer regarding the status of our wells and our water supplies. It is not intended to do much beyond that. We can't make decisions. The intent is to possibly set up a hearing so that we can consider and/or set measures for enhanced conservation. So that's the intent. I see that I have a group of public comment, and we must, I think it's prudent, since you're all here, for us to take public comment prior to, well, first I'll take public comment not related to anything that's on the agenda. Is there anyone that is going to comment on a non-agenda item? Okay, I think that perhaps we should take a general manager's discussion regarding special meeting business discussing water supply conditions.
Thank you, Vice President Berninger. I'm going to turn the staff report over to Bob Reschenberg, District Engineer.
This is public comment, sir, that is not on the agenda item.
Okay, if you have public comment not on the agenda item, then please feel free to come forward and discuss.
Thank you very much, sir. I was not quick in getting that slip ahead to the substitute clerk. My question indeed is, I'm wondering, I hope that President Thompson is having a fantastic vacation rather than his wife still being ill from the surgery. It would sometimes help to know such things just so that we could send the appropriate greeting card, which you can buy down at Cambria Daily Gift to help support the library at the grammar school and the City Library with the wonderful photograph cards that you might find there, including with moonstones. And my real point here is, what has happened with the clerk? I was thinking of sending her a card the other day, but I didn't know what card I should send. So where is Kathy Choate after all these wonderful years that we relied on her so much? I would really appreciate knowing.
Thank you. And I believe that, Ms. Dickinson, did you have a card for this?
Elizabeth and I are of the same mind. We attend almost every meeting. I'm Tina Dickinson from Cambria. I'm wondering what the hell is going on with the CCSD, quite frankly. Where is the district clerk? Why have we not been informed as to why she has not been at the last meeting, nor this meeting, nor at the district office since I saw her August 7th putting in a public records request? The secrecy, the lies are just getting to be outrageous. You talk about facts, folks. We need to know the truth, and we can trust you. Because I can tell you right now, I bet this room is full of people who cannot trust you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And I think we should take note that we're being filmed by a private citizen, and I'm trying to welcome and appreciate that. And my hope is that you will be able to share that with us so that we can post it on our website and or at the video. Thank you.
Vice President Berninger?
Yes.
Over here. The district clerk is out with an illness.
Thank you, and we can get updates from time to time. I think the public would be appreciative.
We're appropriate. We always want to be respectful of our employees and their rights, and I know it's a small community, but the district clerk is out with an illness.
And do you have a comment on?
My name is Barbara Tahan, and this is my first meeting, although I do read Cambria and all the reports. I do have a friendship with one of the members of the board, and at great length discussed the letters of intent to serve, and now we have not enough water. After last month, we had more than enough water to potentially send out many letters of intent to serve. So as a new resident of Cambria, I'm totally confused about what the hell's going on here.
Can I defer to the general manager?
I have a comment.
Yes, sir. If you want to comment on
No, I have just a
a
comment.
general comment.
Yeah. My name is Jeff Hellman. I live here. Yeah, I have had a long interest in Cambria, probably longer than most people here. And sometimes I wonder what happens to our general managers. They seem to be evaporated altogether. Anyway, I have a couple questions. One says, since you folks are asking for more money from us, I'd like to know where I can obtain a financial statement regarding the condition of town. It seems to me it ought to be very public. And I have to agree with Tina that lack of transparency here is causing a very icy cynicism within a community that we don't want to see. We'd like our community to feel like a family, not disjointed, and having the residents feel as if they're being taken advantage of and have information hidden from them. Where can I obtain financial statements?
Financial statements are produced at every meeting, and it's also on the website. And it's very comprehensive.
Oh, good.
So please check.
I'd like to do that. Is one available here now?
At this special meeting, it isn't, but at every monthly meeting, it's very
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
General Manager. And this is item.
So I believe the question this is in response to public comment. So I believe the question was framed with regards to what we're going to be discussing today in the issuance of intent to serve letters. And I think that the board has always asked staff to closely monitor the water situation here in town, and we've done that, and that's why we're here today. And so I've always thought and always said that the board will respond in a proactive and responsible manner. And so that's why we're here with the staff report today. Just an interesting fact, and I think everybody needs to understand this, is that usually we start the SR4 well in March or April. That's historically what happens. And you're all aware of all the work that we've done on the well. We've put upwards to close to $200,000 in there, fully automated, and make it a lot more operational, a lot better operational and things like that. Well, we weren't able to start the well till June because of all the maintenance-related issues and things like this happen. And because of that, we were running the San Simeon wells, and so that has attributed significantly to where we are today. Again, as the Vice President indicated, the purpose of this meeting is really to move forward with a public hearing, which we hopefully will have on the 19th of this month. And at that time, staff will bring back some detailed things on what we should do regarding additional conservation measures. I know that surcharges has not sat well with this community in the past, and I can appreciate that. I know the history. I've owned a home here since 2005. I take issue as a resident and a homeowner more so than a general manager with regards to transparency. I think we really easily forget where we were 2 years ago, April, in this very board meeting, where we were as a community, where this district was, where the relationship between the community and the general manager was, where the relationship between the general manager and the board was, and we've come a long way. We've come a long way. Don't forget that. We've been as transparent as we can. That's why we're sitting here today. And so I would just ask everybody to chill out on the theatrics and making it a bigger deal than it really is. I'm entitled to my opinion as general manager. We're here today because staff has done a really good job in managing our limited resources. This morning, the WBE well is up to 2.98 feet, so that's coming back up. And when that comes to 3 feet, we'll run it. But right now, we feel that it's necessary to implement some further conservation measures, and that's why we're here today. Thank you.
If you want to fill out this,
I did fill one out.
I'm going to take it in order of precedence. In other words, I'm taking it, if you don't mind. Are we, is there a report that you want?
Yeah, I'd like to turn this over to the district engineer for the staff report. It was actually authored by him and the district council, so I don't feel it appropriate for me to comment on it.
And since we are now on 3A, first we'll take the discussion, and then after the discussion we'll take slips in order, and please feel free to fill out a slip if you need to. I'll just put it on the bottom. We'll just go from the top to the bottom. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. The recommendation in front of you is part of a two-step process, basically, to consider a hearing in the future on whether to go to a stage 1, 2, or 3 level water conservation program. So that, like you mentioned earlier, there's no set action occurring with this staff report recommendation. It's just to schedule a hearing to consider that. We looked briefly at the fiscal impact and kind of in general, revenues usually go down if you end up with like a surcharge level, which is a 2 or higher on the conservation program, because people will use less water, and that's the purpose of it, is to encourage conservation. So typically the water and wastewater revenues will come down some. We don't have to quantify it. We can't really give you a hard number under the fiscal impact. Under discussion, we do have a table attached, and it just summarizes that the San Luis well field, the average of 3 wells, is at 3.10 feet above sea level, which is about 2 feet lower than what was reported in the August 22nd board meeting. We estimated that there's about 101 acre feet of supply remaining in the San Luis well aquifer. We looked at, again, the 2007 demands that we covered on a level similar to the year 2007 with their existing monthly demands. And that puts that demand at about 120 acre feet for the next 2 months. So you can see there's a difference there, about 19 acre feet roughly. And then although we still have pretty good well level with SR4, it's at roughly 49 feet above sea level. It has been shut down. We have concerns over this downstream monitoring well by the San Luis Lagoon. Our permit has a 3-foot limit. And as Jerry just mentioned earlier, it's at 2.9. So we're 2/100ths off. We do believe that moves around some of the tidal influence. We have had several occurrences in the past years where there's been conservation surcharges or / penalties for excess conservation. Again, it's a means to reduce demand. For example, the stage 1 is pretty much voluntary, but that's set up to reduce demands by about 7%. Stage 2 would be roughly a 15% reduction in demands. So according to that, staff is recommending that you schedule a public hearing within the next 4 weeks to consider implementation of water conservation measures. In addition, the board recently approved some changes to the conservation program and a process for interim issuance of intent to serve letters, which is roughly based on having 1.7 to 1 ratio between the savings required versus demand of that particular future connection. But given the current water situation, staff is recommending putting the question on how many intent to serve letters to issue on hiatus pending further review and analysis of the water savings that can be achieved, and staff suggests that it return to the board with that item early in 2014, which allows time for to continue work with the county on related changes to the management ordinance. That pretty much summarizes the report. If you have questions, I'm glad to respond to them.
I would like to thank you for bringing this to our attention as quickly as you did, and this meeting was brought up very quickly. I appreciate that, and we'll accept that recommendation at the moment for board discussion. I think we can, it would be, with that in mind, please, I'll take your comment slips in order, then we'll bring the issue back to the board. And I don't think I mixed these up too much, but if a new one comes in, it'll come on the bottom. I hope that you can reserve.
We have a considerable amount of experience with that creek, with the watershed, with the hydrology, and of course, I also have the experience of my husband, who is a research soil physicist with his major emphasis in his studies and in his research was on the movement of water through soils. He's volunteered several times, not to this board, many times to assist the district pro bono. So far, no one's taken him up on it. Over 32 years. So I'm not zeroing in on you guys. This is an extremely difficult time for you. I recognize that, and it's not of your making. This has been going on since the district started. A lot of it is people bought houses and lots in this community without adequate information on the water situation, so that we have, and I know this sounds weird and I don't use this word, we have an excess of people for the amount of water that you have, and that's just the way it is. The reason I asked to have that picture passed around is our stock pond in the upper watershed of Santinian Creek. It's dry, it's really down. A couple of years ago, Cal Fire used it to help put out the fire on the ridge, and dipping their buckets in as they went by. Their buckets would hit bottom. You're getting no help out of the watershed whatsoever. And there was a comment in the article in the paper about the 120 acre feet that might be needed until the beginning of, or until the rainy season. Well, it's not the rainy season you need to zero in on. You need 10 to 12 inches of rain to get the watershed saturated enough that the water from saturation drains into the creek, which then refills the aquifer. That's the number you should be zeroing in on, is that 10 to 12 inches. And in conclusion, this was a poster that I used to make for my friends in 1982 during that drought. And it says, and I'll pass it around later, in this land of sun and fun, we don't flush for number one. And it won't help the ultimate water supply of the community, but it may help people lower their surcharges. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bianchi, former supervisor. Karen Dean, followed by Bubba Tan.
I was actually hoping I'd be a little farther down on your list so I wouldn't have to say all of it. First of all, this probably is more directed to the engineer. Would you please explain to me how you know how many acre-feet of water is available at this point? Is this a matter of how much we have left of what we are allowed to pump from a particular aquifer for this time period, or is it figured with some formula based on the static level in the well? I'm not criticizing your ability to do this. I just want to understand the process that I'm comfortable. I do understand your ability to figure out how much we need to cover the normal use based on past usage. I have asked at the last two meetings, without receiving an adequate answer, or really any answer, what our backup was if we had a problem with a well, another ruptured pipe as we recently had, and something happens like a fire that uses a tremendous amount of water to fight. Part one is happening. We're having well problems. At the last meeting, you asked Chief Miller if having 20 more homes would have an effect on his ability to fight a fire. His answer was based on his capability with his equipment, manpower, and help from neighboring agencies. He stated our system is capable of pumping a maximum of 1,500 gallons per minute. So if we have a fire in one of these homes on a single lot with houses close enough to pass the Great Coupon from window to window with pine trees all around and several agencies helping and pumping up to that maximum, we're going to go through a heck of a lot of water even in just an hour. So now, if Murphy's Law has kicked in and we have a well problem like we do now, what's the plan? Where is our backup water? It's not a point of how many homes we have conserved water for. It's the fact that this is all the water we have. We are not creating new water. I mentioned the retrofit point back and that maybe we should hold on to that paper water in case of a problem. I thought that those who would want to build new homes should have to do verified retrofits on existing properties to free up the water to build instead of using the points in the retrofit bank, and that maybe we should save that bank water for backup. My question is now, where is that water in our retrofit piggy bank now that we can use it to help with our current deficit? I've heard it asked whether we should be considering issuing intent to serve lower in such a drought. The answer from a board member was, if not now, when? I think Mother Nature is giving you a heads up, not now. At a previous board meeting, it was stated that you're not asking us to sacrifice more or change our lifestyle. Just keep on doing as we are now. That through our conservation and retrofit program, the new projects will be required to save 1.7 to 1. So we should not be seeing any significant overall water use. But here we are today with the board talking about possibly putting on surcharges and penalties to force people to use less so we could get through this water crisis. Putting off the intent to serve 6 months isn't the answer. 2 months ago you said we had plenty of water. Today we don't. Oops, how fast things change. I know the first thing we need to do is concentrate on getting through this current water situation. But when this is over and you get back to the issue of intent to serve, think about what is happening now. If this is the second year of a 2-year drought or the second year of a drought that lasts several years, no one knows. The climate is changing. The board's responsibility is to look at the whole town. First, the water needs of the people who live here now before the smaller number of people who do not have homes here yet. And please, look for a new water source before you put the existing residents in jeopardy by using water that they sustain.
Thank you. And I didn't pronounce that right, but Barbara, and
It's Barbara. Come on.
and followed by Mahela.
I moved here in 2006. I am a permanent resident here now. And since I've moved here, I have read weekly articles about desal, no desal, we're going to do this, we're going to conserve, we're not going to conserve. All I can say is from a person coming from the San Joaquin Valley, where water definitely is an issue, the entire state, water is an issue, I'm very concerned about the notice of intent to serve, whether that be now, 6 months from now, or a year from now. When you look at the census report, you realize that we probably have somewhere near a 30% non-occupancy level full-time, if not higher in Cambria, with an aging population. Now, I don't like to be grim, but as those people pass to the next dimension and their families move in, or sell and begin using water on a regular basis, have you taken that into consideration? With the existing structures we have that are using very little water that may at one point consume a lot of water. So I'm very concerned about the situation. I appreciate everything you're doing. I do take note with your idea that we're making this too big a deal than it is. I think there's nothing that's going to be a bigger deal in all of our lives than water. We can get around without oil. We can't live without water.
Thank you.
Mahela Burton, Cambria. Well, I'm going to be mean, and I'm going to put the blame where it belongs. It belongs with Director Cliff for the veto on the past, and it belongs with the other directors. It belongs with Director Robinette for being on the water wait list and not recusing herself, as she said she would in June, when she was appointed, June of 2011. So it was no secret. And I blame this attorney, Mr. Carmel, for using weasel words after your partner wrote in a memo in 2011 and said that the moratorium should not be lifted until we had new water. But you used some weasel words to allow this board to move along with your intent to serve plan. So while you could have asked for a 10% voluntary cutback way back in June or May, you didn't, because you were running down to the Board of Supervisors on our dime. You wanted a raise. You weren't satisfied with $75. You wanted it up to $100. Every time you went, you got paid. You got lunches. You got gas. What else did you get? Who knows? But that's all you did. And now you're sitting there and you're not apologizing. This is huge. Santa Rosa Creek is supplemental water. The wells have been shut down before. They were shut down this year for 5 months. You know there's a monitoring well. That water is supposed to be used for supplemental only, not growth. But you ignored everything. Your engineer, he begged you to do a sensitivity study when we were planning on a water supply. No, you didn't want that. He told you that there are mechanical failures, tsunamis, earthquakes, anything can shut down our well fields. Well, drought shut them down. And you're sitting there, you're not apologizing. You're just waiting. For what? For some magical rain to appear October 15th? I want to know what the drought plan is. Have any of you read the 1989 drought plan? Do you even know it exists? Because I know you don't read anything. All you do is blender and push and shove and say, we want our friends on the water wait list to get water. And one of those people is sitting there, right there. Do you deserve a profit? Is it ethical for you to get a profit on your worthless lot? No. Thank you.
Bill C., followed by Jeff Palmer.
Hello, I'm Bill C.B. and I live on Londonderry in Cambria, and I've lived here for 8 years. And not just the rest of the board, but what I've come down here to say, basically, first of all, I think on its face, offering or suggesting that you're going to issue more cert letters at this point, at this juncture, is ridiculous. And everybody in this audience pretty much knows that. Okay. No more criticism. What I'm most known for probably is that editorial that I wrote for the Cambrian about the preciousness of water. And I suggested that we need a Manhattan Project to conserve water in this community. I think you're probably familiar with that. But I'm not just blowing out smoke, because I've done 2 demonstrations here in this community on how to save water via rainwater catchment. Didn't do it for money, didn't do it to enhance my reputation around here, whatever. And they were quite well attended, and this is a very simple concept. The water is not something that's likely to go in the aquifer, not that much of it. An inch or 2 of rain can actually fill a 1,100-gallon tank of water in a matter of hours. I have 2,000 gallons of water stored on my property right now, which I'm not budging with until I know that we're not going to run out of water, which seems to be a definite possibility. Anyway, I told people how they could do that. In Australia, the government pays for these water tanks. $900, 1,100 gallons. Everybody in Cambria ought to have one of these things. And I'm sure Yankee pointed out the fact that, which I also pointed out in my editorial, that one of the simplest things anybody can do to conserve is just don't flush number 1 on a regular basis. 50% of all our water goes down the toilet, all of our portable water. And that's a statistic that they arrived at from urban areas. So I don't imagine saying it's a minute. But we do conserve a lot of water here. And I don't see why we should be penalizing people who are trying to conserve water. And I think that the approach should be not penalizing, but educating people on how people can conserve. The simple things, the things that make sense, that I can talk about. Technological things may make sense, but they're expensive. Now, I'm just going to point out that we have a super expert on all aspects of water conservation, green energy, whatever, in this community. His name's Ken Haggard. He used to be a professor at Cal Poly. He wrote a 50-page book on all those kinds of things you can do. I have a copy of it. Be happy to share it with the board. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Z. Jeff Palmer, followed by Tina Dickinson. Jeff Palmer. I'm not seeing Jeff. Tina Dickinson, followed by Bob McDonald.
Cambria, I would have to say that rather than calling this a special meeting today, considering the crisis now that we face, this should have been an emergency meeting with action taken today and posted on your agenda. What I'm submitting for the record is the final report for the baseline water supply analysis prepared by Kennedy Jenks Consultants for the CCSD. In this report, which I would have hoped you would have read, under Chapter 4-12, Emergency Water Conservation Program, Stage 1 Water Conservation Program, Drought Watch Condition. We should have been in that at the beginning of the dry season. Number 2, Water Conservation Program with Water Shortage Condition. We've been in that for a while. Stage 3, Water Shortage Emergency Condition, which I consider that is where we are. And 4, Water Supply and Demand Model. I am turning this in for public record. And also, I have one for each of the directors. I'm assuming you haven't read it. So I'm reading it to because you're not asking. In addition, I looked at the well charts this morning. Last month, I had what we call the spaghetti chart, and it was through August the 15th. I looked at the website today, and we're back to July 15th. What happened? Why do we not have at least what we had August 15th? I'd like an answer to that. I have both charts, one for July 15th, one for August, which has gone down to about below 6 feet above sea level. It's about 5.5, 5.75. So where are we now? It's been taken off. The other thing I could not get was the well production report. That's not there. It's there, but you can't get any information. When I say that we've been misled, misguided, and I believe lied to, I believe we've been lied to. You put this town in serious jeopardy. We've been telling you all along. And last month, after the 10 or 12 people who left, I watched what you all had to say about us. And it was disgusting. And you talk about lack of public decorum. I think Mr. Beringer, of all of you, was the only one who showed any sense of public decorum. So I take issue with that also. I've written notes about what all of you said. And quite frankly, we come to this meeting today in a very different mode, with a very different situation that we were not aware of. We 10 have been aware of it. If you look at the paper, if you look at yesterday's Cambria is so dry, it's considering setting water charges, surcharges. What will the surcharges add to the wells? Nothing.
Thank you for your comments.
You should be taking immediate action based on that report that I've given to all of you this morning.
Thank you for your recommendation. Bob McDonald.
Do something.
Followed by John McDonald.
Good morning. My name is Bob McDonald. I live in Cambria. And unfortunately, last meeting, my thoughts got derailed and I wasn't able to make my point. So here I am again. I would say that we can all learn from the past and from the future. And from this, we can do better today. About the past. About 15 years ago, this is what experts hired by the district said about our dry year water supply. Dave Andrus, the general manager, said about 500 acre-feet in a dry year. Greg Luke, an engineer working for us at that time, said 400 acre-feet or 600 acre-feet. It depends. So what do we do to reduce our water use in a dry year by 1/3 or more? How does a resident do it? We're hearing some of that. How does a motel owner and his guests do it? This should be a big issue, and I guess it is. But of course, we would think that certainly no letters of intent, which I guess we've got to that point. But knowing about sporadic dry years should turn off the tap until we have a second water source. What about the future? Climate seems and is increasingly variable. A scientific study released last week of a dozen of 2012 weather events found man-made global warming increased the chance of about half of those, including the Rockaway Beach destruction and the terrible summer heat. Would you allow a safety factor in our water supply because of the uncertain future? I hope you will. The present. Let science help you estimate the effect of climate change. Don't trust conservation measures until there is hard evidence that they work. Bring the farmers into the discussion. They have senior water rights. Build the confidence of our public by analyzing our dry years and developing a program to deal with this more than we have now. Do not issue intent to serve letters until a second water source is available. Finally, please keep us informed and gain our trust. One final point. Get us a good build-out reduction plan and you will go down in history.
One way or the other, I guess. Thank you, Bob. John McKinnon, followed by Jeff Hellman.
John McKinnon, business owner in Cambria and resident. Just a clarification. We're talking about using the stage 1 or 2 or 3. I was on a committee that looked at that because for a long time we haven't used that. It would be very draconian and inappropriate for this community. That's why I meant, when we've had these situations, they went to the surcharge. So I'm just curious if that's what we're talking about, using the surcharges at this time, or going to the actual stage 2 on that open draconian method of doing that. And that committee actually did come to the board, and Jerry's been kind enough to talk to me since he got here to talk about what happened with that committee, and we had very good recommendations as far as getting rid of the 1, 2, and 3 and approaching it in a different way that would work better with the community. It was a large committee with many representations of the different walks of the community. Amanda was on as well. And I am happy to be available. Sorry that we've been both very busy people. But he's always been very approachable and the word being thrown around earlier. Clarity and transparency. Thank you. So anyways, just want to get clarification on that, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Jeff Hellman, followed by Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Hi, I'm Jeff Hellman, resident of Cambria. One thing that nobody's taken into consideration in this conservation program is the businesses. A hiking buddy of mine told me to read in the Tribune that the business receipts, tax receipts for Cambria are 30% this year. We got a lot more tourists. Anybody that goes into town knows that tourism is booming. It's doing really, really well. Well, what about all the water that the businesses use? The restaurants, are you guys taking that into account? Are they going to be, when businesses will more than eclipse the amount of savings you get out of some funky shower heads. So as water use increases, you're telling us we have more water available. Everybody in this whole town knows that you guys are extremely illogical on this water. Where's the water coming from? In other words, if business is booming and business is using, say, in theory, 30% more water, that's going to crush any savings you get from your funky little paper water. So what is the board going to do about this? You don't take that into your equation, do you? I mean, start thinking about the people in the town. You know, this idea that businesses can have any amount of water they want and then the residents have to start conserving water is just more evidence that your priorities are for businesses over the residents of this this community. So, you know, stop letting business trump the needs of the people that live here, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your brevity. And Elizabeth Bettenhausen, followed by Rick Holly.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have four quick points. Regarding what was distributed to us for this special meeting, I would like to know, has any work been done to determine what is the cause of the very intense water demand in the past 17 days? We have moved a great deal up in water demand. I've heard rumors that it was from Pine to Rod using a very, very huge amount of water per day with all the businesses, etc. But I think before your special hearing, your public hearing coming up, we need data to account for this level of demand. Second, I would like to know in the well report that you distributed for today, the gradient level is -5.3 between the two wells up at Sansinian, which are not production wells, but they are the wells used to measure the gradient. I want to know at your coming meeting, your special meeting, public hearing, what is the safe gradient level between those two wells, and whether or not we have an issue with the percolation ponds being determining what that level is, as well as brackish water, saltwater intrusion. So those two issues must be addressed, I would hope, at your special hearing. Three, you all remember, of course, having read it very thoroughly, because I know from your comments about it, your urban water management plan, which was supposed to be 2010, but you issued it in 2012 with some delay. I would like you to read page 50 before you come to your special meeting, the special public hearing, because there it clearly states, if you have 2 drought years in a row, you will have to have a 15% reduction in demand. Now, we've heard references today to new conservation, to fixing up the conservation. I want to know specifically, what are your plans for additional conservation? How will those plans be enforced? Not simply concocted, but who has the responsibility to make sure that conservation is happening even beyond what you have already proposed, for which there is no monitoring either. So we claim we have conservation friends, but we have no hard data that demonstrates that. You know, dear board members, that I sent you a memo almost 2 weeks ago asking for your expeditious response to my inquiry. How do we measure actual water use in this town? And I have not heard from any of you. I look forward, of course, you're very busy in this situation. I look forward certainly to hearing from you. And I also am waiting for the district engineer who kindly said he would get it to me last week, but I can understand certainly why it's not here now. What is the protocol for CCSD to monitor and measure water use and well conditions? Why have we all of a sudden had a little drop in our wells? And I want to know, what method do you all use, and do you supervise as board that the staff uses to look at the wells carefully? Quantity and quality, and I've been waiting for that since July, early July. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Richard Hall, followed by Cynthia Hall.
Good morning. My name is Rick Hawley. I live here in Cambria. I want to kind of piggyback on what Shirley Bianchi was saying about how much rain it requires to start filling up the watershed again. And she makes a really good point. And I think that this esteemed board of directors needs to take that into really serious consideration, because just because we get 10 inches of rain or 12 inches of rain, it's not going to make any difference at all to what happens with our consumption here in town. We're going to still be involved in a lot of problems. And this isn't really a real drought. I mean, we've all lived who have been here, lived here, wandered, have seen some very serious droughts. This is I'm not belittling this drought, but it could be a lot worse. And the last thing I want to bring up is the monitoring well and that 3 feet and how important that 3 feet is. It's as the district engineer pointed out, we had plenty of water in SR4, 50 feet, we had no problems. But we really do have a problem. And that 3 feet doesn't really reflect reality anymore, because we have climate change, we have sea level rise. That 3 feet, with this very simple analysis, should be at least 3.6 feet now because of sea level rise. And I think that's going to be addressed here by the Water Resources Board with many water diversion agencies along the coast. Because we're going to get sea level, or we're going to get saltwater intrusion. 1974, we had subsidence in this town, where the buildings started to crack because we were messing around with that 3 foot level. So I think you ought to look at history, because history often teaches us something, but we are reluctant to believe it. We think of all these promises, and one of them is paper water. Promise. It's the milk and honey for our future, and it's really not there. So we're going to have to start living within a good water budget, and you people have to start believing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hellman. Cynthia Hall, followed by Mary Webb.
Cynthia Hawley. We've come up against the water limits in this town just like the rest of the world is having to face. But now in Cambria, we wake up to find that not only is there not enough water for the next 2 months, but the underground supply is so low that we risk irreparable damage to the aquifer itself. I have to admit that some of you on this board stepped into a mess, to a crumbling infrastructure, a bank account depleted by mostly useless studies, to threatened resources, to absolutely no water storage, to a despicable disrespect for the law, and for the utter absence of competent management, which did not even inform you of your responsibility to avoid this crisis by following our own drought ordinance, which you have violated. This town's water resources are not commodities to be exploited for the profit of some, and we are here today to make sure that you understand that. We have laws in place to prevent it, laws you promised under oath to uphold, which you have violated. You have violated your duty of trust to protect the water resource for the benefit of customers. You have violated your duty to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. You have violated the California Constitution, which prohibits the waste of water and allows only the reasonable use of water. You have violated multiple laws of the California Coastal Act and the local coastal program. You have violated your explicit and mandatory duty, a statutory duty, to protect the groundwater basin and the prohibition against exceeding the safe yield of the groundwater basin. You have violated your duty to protect the groundwater for riparian, agricultural, and residential uses. You have violated state law that invests in the people of this state the primary interest in the prevention of irreparable damage to groundwater basins caused by overdraft, depletion, and seawater intrusion. You have violated the California Environmental Quality Act in your purposeful and intentional evasion of environmental review of your unlawful scheme to issue intent to serve letters in direct violation of Cambria's own water moratorium, the state water code's prohibition against violating that moratorium, and common sense. Whether you have withheld or worse yet falsified information and records is yet to be and will be known. I ask you to direct your legal counsel at this time, in this meeting, counsel funded by Cambria's ratepayers, to explain to us all the legal steps that must be taken to attempt to limit the scope of this crisis.
Mary Webb, followed by Barry Neal.
Mary Webb, Cambria. I will really echo all the comments that have been made already here today. And
didn't even really want to speak until I heard really our general manager and the district engineer saying that, you know, the well level being below 3 feet, the monitoring well, and saying it in such a way like it's no big deal. That is the violation of our water permit. This is a water and sewer district. That is a violation. It's below 3 feet. To dismiss that and act like that's no big deal is just so distressing to me. I can't even believe it. And for the general manager to call this like theatrics, that we're just hyping up a situation for some benefit. I mean, like, what would the benefit be? We have been happy to conserve. We have been happy for 13 years to pay surcharges as long as we were in a moratorium and a Water Code 350 emergency, because we knew that at least we weren't going to be adding to the problem, even though the boards over the past did add to the problem by building more pipeline projects than actually existed. We had 124 pipeline projects, we built 310. So we're out of water? Yeah, no kidding. I had a lot of hope for this board. I'm so disappointed because at the same time, you're down at the county trying to increase the growth management ordinance so that we can grow. You're trying to issue intent to serve letters so we can grow. When we have no water supply alternative, we have no water project, we're out of money due to the mismanagement in the past of our budget down here. And instead of looking at the water situation county-wide, look how serious it is. And here we are in Cambria, same situation. Where were stage 1, stage 2, stage 3? I completely disagree with Mr. McKinnon and the Water Emergency Advisory Committee representing anything but business. They weren't representing residences. They're representing business owners, of the business as usual, Chamber of Commerce crowd. No one was representing the residents. Where is the public policy and the planning before you get to a stage 1, much less a stage 3? We're in stage 3, critical level water shortage emergency. Not only should it have been stage 3 already in Cambria as of probably January of this year, the county should have certified our level 3 emergency, 4 years ago, because we have no water project.
And the last speaker slipped was Laurie Neal.
Good morning, I'm Laurie Neal, the president of Cambria. Just wanted to do a couple of quick follow-ups on some of the things that I've heard. First of all, someone mentioned the fact that there are people who bought lots here some years ago. And I think that it's not your responsibility to make sure that someone's investment pays off. We all make investments and they don't always pay off. And I think that you're allowing large projects, which are speculative investments, such as Kingston Bay and people's self-help housing, is quite frankly irresponsible. But to move on to something I think a little more positive. Before I left the house this morning, I printed out a sheet from the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And this is the Water Conservation Ordinance. And I was surprised when I read that your first move in order to get us to conserve water was surcharges. Because it seems to me that there are very many other options that are even more effective. And I'll just read you a couple from the LA Water Conservation Ordinance fact sheet. They don't allow watering of any hard surfaces like sidewalks, walkways, driveways. No outdoor watering during periods of rain. No washing vehicles. Serving water to customers in restaurants is not allowed. In phase 2 restrictions, there's odd and even sprinkler ordinances. Sprinklers are limited to 8 minutes. There's a lot of things you can do either instead of or even in addition to surcharges. We have done our part and we're willing to do more, so now please do your part.
Bigler because the last slip in, but Alan McKinnon, followed by John McKinnon.
Al McKinnon. I have a lot of respect for this board and the operations organization, but I'm reminded by the Pogo Strip character. We are the enemy. We, together, the board, the community, has argued the fact of what we need in order to have adequate water supply. This board is defined first and foremost by providing water. All the other issues are subordinate. And it's not happening. We follow the Pied Piper called Madhouse, which I strongly disagreed with when I was on the board and still do, for paper water. Water is still defined by what we have in our aquifers. And there's one thing that I think is missing, and it's simply the word desal. It's become a negative word, but it's one that has to be addressed. It's being addressed by Nipomo. It's being addressed by Paso Robles. It's being addressed throughout the United States. And the technology today is adequate. It's been proven, and it's economical. I think what we have right now is an operations, and I look to them more than I do to the board. I was a member of that board, and I take responsibility along with you of not being aggressive enough to get the alternate water supply. And I just preach this again with the word desal. The positive is it protects our aquifers, it doesn't destroy them. It's been proven that the outfall of desal is almost zero effect on the ecology. It's been proven, and I hear the murmurs in the audience. But I also would support the fact that we have the wrong team. And I say this, the Army Corps of Engineers has used taxpayer money as well as Cambrian money in order to perform and to acquire an alternate water supply. Their first choice is desal. They have done close to nothing in 7 years, and it's time for a new action on the part of the board. Whether it be desal, whether it be anything else, but my position is this: it's operations. It's no longer the board. The board makes policy. Operations must perform, and they haven't. 7 years is much too long, and I think it's the time for change. I think that the district engineer, I have respect for Mr. Gresham's, is not up to the job. He can't perform and get what we need. I also believe that we need counsel that is going to allow us to break through this morass of legislation that prevents us from doing almost anything. And he can protect us to do the things that we can follow the law and stay under it. But we need someone that can say, here's the way we can get this passed. Here's the way we can get this alternate water supply. Conservation isn't going to do it. It's been said many times, and it's over and over again. How are you going to monitor it? How, in fact, are you going to prove that you have 1.71 to 1 before someone can build? There should be an absolute moratorium on water being allocated any more than it is today. And I can only say, again, I have tremendous respect for the board. I've been there. It is a tough job. You shouldn't be maligned. You're trying to do what's right. You are for the people. And I would bring it back to one final statement. You are responsible for providing water to this community above all else. And for that reason, your focus every meeting should be specifically on that and almost nothing else. Thank you.
John McKinnon, community member, business owner. I have to clarify something my good neighbor Mary said, and she is literally my next door neighbor, is that, that committee, I was the only business member on that committee. I believe it was, Amanda, you could correct me, like 8 of us, or And so, but
I'll clarify one more then.
yeah, okay. So, anyway, so yeah, it was very well represented by community members, much more than business, and definitely was no rubber stamp. I had some good bites on my hand, but some good logical discussions that went on and people understood. And I want to clarify, I have no agenda to have big growth in this. People would assume some know me here from the past, some are new faces. I like the quaintness of Cambria. That's what we as business members sell here. So I have no agenda to build another house, or I really have no dog in that fight. So what Mr. McKinnon says is true. Our issue is we need an alternate water source. I happen to believe that the logical choice is desal. I know that's a contentious thing as well, but I think for this community it's the smartest thing. Unfortunately, like he brings up, the government apparatus, I liken it to Lucy and Charlie Brown, with Lucy setting up the football and Charlie Brown constantly coming up to try and kick it, and the Coastal Commission kind of grabs the ball and pulls it away. But that's our problem. We have a shortage here. That's been well established for 3 decades at least, and we do have to get an alternative, irregardless of building another home. And I know part of the agenda to possibly let out some intent to serve letters is to get money to work towards that means, but it might be a tough thing to sell at this point. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, John. And yes, somebody did get their ticket in at the end, Harry Farmer. Tina Dickinson, I'm going to have to for all fairness, you have already spoken. Thank you.
Hi, Jim.
Oh, there you go. For fairness, why will let Tina back up? So, Harry, followed by
No.
Good morning, board. I seem to recall it probably began even before the beginning of this century that people would come up here and address the issues of an alternative water supply in this community. And somehow the only effort that's been made by this board and the district is desal. And yet there are all types of alternatives that are out there available to us. And many people, including myself, have gotten up and spoken during this century with regard to cisterns and side stream reservoirs. And these are technologies, not really technologies, but very simple ways of, let's say, collecting rainwater that have been used for thousands of years. Now we have wastewater purification and the use of greywater system technologies modern technologies that can be utilized in this community. And yet the board and this district have made no effort at all to even begin to investigate using these in this community. Now I do recall when I moved here, and I've lived here 27 years, that at one time for a couple of years, folks in this community were encouraged to purchase cisterns, and they were even given a rebate. That only lasted a couple of years. I'm going to speculate that folks decided, well, the district isn't really going to make money on cisterns, so we'll just push it desal. I don't really want to get into that, but I really want to beseech you to have some vision with regard to what you can do in the future for this community as to how to collect the rainwater that comes down from the sky and purify water that has already been used. And I want to say one more thing. At the last meeting, 10 members of this community got up, well-spoken, thoughtful, articulate, and concerned about the issues in this town with regard to the intent to serve letters. And after they left, and they left because they could see right off the bat that their thoughtfulness wasn't even going to be considered by this board. And after they left, members of this board denigrated the people that got up and spoke. We're used to being dismissed, but not being denigrated. And I would appreciate it if the folks that got up to here today and spoke to the issues that exist in this community right now as an emergency, that they would be validated and listened to. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
in Cambria. I want to follow up on what Harry's just said. 2 weeks ago, I was at the post office for 6 hours gathering petition signatures against your action to hand out intent to serve, to issue intent to serve. And Mel McCulloch, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, came by, and we had a little brief discussion, very friendly. And I said, well, Mel, you're welcome to sign the petition, because he didn't. But he told me that he'd been in a meeting with some CCSD folks, and the issue was off-stream storage. Very interesting, because that's something that I think a number of people who attend these meetings regularly have recommended to the board. We've never heard that you're following through with that or anything else. And we find ourselves today in this pretty critical situation. For me personally, I've told you many times, I have used 3 units of water. Today was the first day I had a bath in 4 days. I do the old-fashioned wash down with a face cloth because I care about this planet. I care, and I have a conscience about caring about water because I know it is in short supply. But I'll be damned if I'm going to keep continuing to feel that way and think that way when other people can put in swimming pools and you name it, and intend to serve when we don't have the water. If we had another 400 or 500 acre-feet of water, fine. But we don't have the infrastructure. Our infrastructure that we have for water and wastewater is crumbling, and we need to take care of it. And I resent the fact that this board and this general manager and council have allowed this to get to this point. And while we're up to 750 signatures, we're going to keep going, because if you do not act in a way that is responsible, that will help this town, the next action will be recall, and I will be the one to start. Thank you.
That concludes public comment. I would like to bring it back to the board.
Very, very draconian in its implementation in an effort to save 15% water. We've asked and asked. Erwin Oweneshan was the chair of that committee, and I think that the committee spent easily over a year looking at our infrastructure, looking at the things that are in the program with the ordinance for surcharges. And to say that it was run by business, I'll tell you right now, there were a lot of arguments in that group because there was a business interest and the residential interest, and they did not always see eye to eye. In fact, I don't think we ever even came to some kind of, I wouldn't say agreement, but everybody has their own interest in this. On that idea of business versus residential, I heard somebody say, I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was, but somebody suggested that it would be good to know what the ratio is between the business use and the residential use, and before we consider surcharges, I would very much like to know if our ratio is still about 25-75% or if there's a different ratio, because unless we're going to implement as the ordinance says specifically, I think we need to know that so that we can direct any kind of methods that we use to try and reduce our water use or our water demand to the highest users, which may be business, it may not be. But it's good to know where those high users are so that we can target them and hopefully get some relief on demand from that. I totally agree with bringing the farmers and the other riparian landowners into the discussion. I think it's one of the things that this district has had a downfall in the past and continues to have difficulty with, struggle with, which is communication, because there's obviously bad communication going on. I don't feel like I'm making decisions based on faulty data. I don't feel like that I'm hiding data. And if I'm not getting all the data so that I'm making a decision on faulty data, I definitely want to know that too. And if I think that I've got the data that I need, but the community feels like I'm making a bad decision, then there's some communication errors going on, and we're not doing a good job either as a board or as a staff or as a district as a whole, as a community, talking to each other. I totally agree with what's up with the increased demand over the last 17 days? The level in San Simeon went way down. I'd like to know if we know why that happened or if there's anything we can do about it. The well production chart. First time, just so you know, I went and downloaded it today. For the first time, when I clicked on the link, it said download the PDF. So if your internet browser isn't set to a certain thing, it won't download the PDF. I just downloaded it this morning. I know I have a lot of clients who have Internet Explorer or they're using a different browser, that if they click on a link for a PDF, their browser, part of the security settings, doesn't let them do it, and you can't even tell that you're not getting it. So it's not that, I don't think it's that it's hiding it. I did notice that it only counted up to the end of July, and I don't know why the August well production numbers aren't part of what I downloaded this morning. I totally agree with Rick Hawley. We do need to have a budget, a water budget, and we need to learn how to live within it. It would be nice to know what that budget is without harming the riparian landowners, without harming the environment, without having seawater intrusion. It'd be nice to know. The people here that are here today, these are the people who care. There's a lot of people at home who care a lot, who are doing everything that they can to save water. People that are using 3 units, 4 units, 5 units, 6 units a month, who see no difference in their bill, whether they use 6 or 3, which is a ridiculous thing. We need to be structuring our rates so that people who use less water can tell they're doing a better job, because they're not being charged what people use 6. Why would I use less than 6 if I'm going to pay the same amount anyway? It makes no sense in a situation like this community where we're asking people to use less than that, for them to do that. People that are part of the problem are people that don't live here. People that are absentee landowners, people who are landlords, who don't care whether the fixtures in the households that they rent are low flow, and people who are renters in this town have no way. We have no way to get to those folks because they don't pay the water bill. Renters pay the water bill, but the renters don't want to go and buy a washing machine for a house they rent. So how do you get to those folks? There's always going to be some gaps in how we deal with this. The last thing I want to say is our Supervisor Gibson, just last week I think actually, suggested that the solution to the overdraft in Paso Robles was a 2-to-1 retrofit. He suggested that the way out of their water problem was to build. I don't see why that wouldn't be a solution here if that's going to be a solution there. He said 2-to-1, and he feels like that would help solve the problem of overdraft in Paso. We had something like that here where we were building and saving. And I'm not talking about paper water here. I don't believe in paper water. I'm talking about actual savings that we can verify, and the California Urban Water Conservation Council, to which we are a party of their MOU. We have signed that MOU, and we are following what their best management practices are. They have specific ways that they verify that you're implementing the BMPs properly. We could be using that. And we know there's different ways of verifying everything, but the first thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that we're not causing seawater intrusion and that we're keeping our environment good for the environment and for us, because we love this town. I'm going to stop for now. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, much of what Director Rice has said, I certainly echo, or I could, and agree. I think people here that have come here today come with a good heart. I believe people care. I don't see myself apart from that, because I think we all live here. I think we all know that surely things have turned very serious in our county, in our state, in the western region. It has really become very, very apparent that we have some real problems to solve. I've heard some people who really focus on solutions today. I've heard some negative thinking. That won't move us forward. Where I believe we need to go as a community is cooperation and accomplishment. I absolutely agree with you that the number one thing we need to do here to rest and sleep better at night is have some type of water storage. I've heard people remind us that we have been after this for over 15 years. Now there's got to be something that we can all come together and agree with. And that's really where I am. We do need to, surcharges are a reaction. They're not a solution. But if we are serious, and I think you are, and I am, I think before we leave here, or one of our next steps does have to be a committee not to go in circles and not move forward and have a result. But I do believe we need a committee. You have mentioned some good things here today. We've heard off-stream reservoir again. What we have to do is we do have to find out what is allowable for us here and what are constraints. Because we find some of the great ideas that I hear you talk about, that I would like to, we're not going to be allowed to do. And so we have to know what are our options. We do have to know that. I think we have great concerns about desal. We know about the environmental issues there. We know that we could talk about a RO, more of we could do with reverse osmosis. We kind of talked about that. That's kind of where we were with the Army Corps of Engineers. But what I'm really after here today is to stop this undercurrent of bickering, of mistrust. I don't like to be accused of not being trustworthy. That is a first in my life's experience, in my journey. I want to trust you too. And I want us to come out of here today with something positive, with something defined. I think the best bet is to, and I hate the word committee, you know, it's like having another consultant almost. We do all this all the time. But I do believe in buy-in and inclusion and mutual respect. And so I believe we do have to come up with a committee. That will be a task in itself. Well, who's going to be on the committee? Well, what special interest do they have? That will be tough. But we can't not do it. We need to have someone, and we need timelines, and we need a solution, and we know it's going to cost money. But we need to get past this. This is an intermediate first step, because we in Cambria also clearly must realize, we must all know this, we are not going to just be able to solve our water problem with water storage. It has to be water storage. We can conserve, we can have surcharges, we can do all these other things, but if it just is never stored, it still doesn't make any difference. It's still gone. It's not here with us. So we have to have that. But we have to also recognize we can't just sit here in Cambria and think we can solve our problem and the rest of the world, too bad. Or the next community over, too bad. Or the next county over, too bad. We clearly are faced as a planet with some very challenging problems. So while we may look at something and actually come up with something, and we have to put this conversation to rest. We do. We're still going to have to know that in another place and another time in the future, we're going to look at, so what does California do? What does the county next door do? Those are bigger things. But we right now are worried about us in Cambria, within our community, within our borders. And that is probably the most attainable, doable thing that we can do for now. So and listening to everyone, I see the concern, I see the caring, but please don't make any mistake about it. I have as much caring and concern about you, and some of you have that for me here, I know that. But our community is a wonderful place. It would be really nice for us to agree on a water source. I believe we've been after this for years. I think the time has come. So I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Yeah, I got that feedback from everybody except me. I wrote a couple debating on another one, but yeah, that's stressful.
I was running some numbers here while some of the discussion was going on, and 2007 seems to be a comparable year of what we're looking at pumping and things. And I ran the numbers for SR4, which during that year basically ran 129.55 acre feet. The fact of the matter is, if we can't use SR4 much in the remainder of this year, we're in trouble. Big trouble and immediate trouble. So I grant you that long-range plans are wonderful, but we're going to have to do something fairly quickly.
Yes.
Duh.
And one of the,
But we need a committee.
hopefully the alternative. And SR4, let me back up because I don't think it's been totally explained. SR4 was down for maintenance reasons, and now it's down for environmental reasons. It's not that the water isn't there, it's that we can't use the water because of environmental agreements that have been made in the past. I'm not saying that those things are good or bad or evil. They're the reality, and we're going to have to deal with them. So, seems to me that if we can't use SR4 to some extent, and hopefully we can, that it will get us through. We need to be talking about something that we can do rather quickly. And I'm not an advocate for surcharges. And let me tell you why. SR4 is our problem, and SR4 isn't a indication that the people have used less, have used more water. People have done what they're supposed to do. And to punish individuals because we have a mechanical and an environmental restriction, I have a problem with just punishing people by saying because we have a mechanical problem and because we have certain restrictions, you got to pay. Or that the only alternative is to force you to pay a lot of money so that you won't use the water. Hopefully there's somewhere that we can, through either some forms of encouragement or some other form of stopgap measure, that we can get on through this dry year. It is a dry year. It's a combination of dry year, mechanical problems, environmental restrictions. It's not that the people of this community haven't done their job. And so I'm going to have a hard time voting for surcharges and use that as the stick to get people to understand that we're in a potential problem if we can't use that well. I've heard some suggestions for some immediacy, and I'll leave those to the individuals that are making those suggestions. But it seems to me that whether we make a deal with another provider around here or whatever we do, we need to have a backup plan if SR4 can't work our way through this situation. So I'll leave it at that for right now. We can go on and discuss it later on with other alternatives.
Thank you, Director Cliff. I'd like to weigh in on the issue if I can. I don't know if it was Karen Dean or someone was suggesting that we don't water our lawns, and you know, in some communities you can't serve water, and we have those restrictions in place in this town, and we've been conserving as much as we possibly can. I think it was Marty McNeil that said that we shouldn't have approved people's self-help, and as the public should know, we did not have a choice on that. That we were not able to gain unlimited resource in order to not approve that. Mary Webb mentioned the fact about mismanaged budget, and I think that if you look at our budget over the last 5 years, we've increased our reserves by about $100,000 a year, so I think we're doing that well. And other people, Harry Farmer is one who's talking about cisterns, and I think we should have cisterns and we should have water storage, but 1,000 gallons is less than one EDU, 2,000 gallons. So you would use that in a couple of days, really, when it came to push comes to shove. I have some water storage, and others do, but you use that in a dire emergency. And I think right now we are in a dire emergency. I think we have the one thing that might have made a little bit of a difference. Why do we use so much water? Check with he keeps track of the temperatures. No. Ed keeps track of temperatures for the.
John Lindsay.
No.
Mark Kramer.
Anyway, Mark Kramer. Mark Kramer gave me a quick little. Thank you. Mark Kramer gave me a quick little thing and said that over the Pine Grotto weekend, over the last 10 years, in 2004, the temperature was 74 degrees. Every time after that, it's been in the low 60s. This last weekend, it was the second hottest weekend that we've had at Pine Grotto. Not that that mattered much, but that combined with 30% increase in visitors might have made a tremendous difference. I think that, and I know staff, and I know our district council has said that, I don't know, we're just going, all we're doing is having this meeting, and then we're going to have a meeting on the 19th, and then we might consider surcharges. And the surcharges that frankly do work, but they don't work right away. It takes 4 months for people to see it. If we had surcharges, I definitely recommend for the 19th, when we do consider this, I think that we should look very strongly at the suggestions that were made by the Citizens Committee and incorporate them for surcharges if we could. I need to see that we pay people that are down in the 3 units a month. Instead of them paying us the basic fee, that we pay them the basic fee. It's because they're the ones that are really doing the illness work. It's just an idea. I don't know if that would get much attention. But we've had for a second year of normally dry year, it shouldn't be forgotten that we had some massive water losses. Massive water loss up at the grade school a couple of weeks ago. Well, they don't use our water, but they do. They have their own wells and they're pumping out of that aquifer. We had the Chelsea Brighton leak, which lasted for just a few hours. The Main Street fire hydrant was running 1,500 gallons a minute for up to 5 hours when it was broken. We're talking about a day's worth of water for this town that could have been lost there. We used to balance pumping between the two aquifers. I can't do that anymore. And some people don't know this, but there's a permitted dewatering of Santa Rosa Creek to help support the Main Street Bridge replacement project. They can pump the water out of the ground in order to put the pilings in. I think that right now, especially knowing that surcharges aren't going to take effect for 4 months, that we're in significant jeopardy of having saltwater intrusion in the sensing aquifer And in fact, when Shirley Bianchi mentioned the fact that, hey, people want it tomorrow, it's going to take a while before that gets recharged. And the survival of the San Luis fish, steelhead population is in jeopardy. For that, I think today we cannot make any decisions. We're going to say, are we going to have a meeting on the 9th to address surcharges and water on the 19th? And so I'm going to poll the board to see if they're in favor of that. Are you in favor of having another meeting on the 19th to consider surcharges and other issues that are...
Is the 19th a regular meeting? Or
no, that's a week earlier.
I'm not going to be in town.
If I could, Vice President Berger, I think we need to have it. The reason being is because of the things that everyone discussed here today, the board and the public. I'll let the district council elaborate on it, but it is part of the process, and we're following the process that's identified in our municipal code. And what I would suggest is that we come back with a shopping list or a laundry list, that instead of just saying this is what staff recommends, I think it's important, because I'm hearing things regarding surcharges, and come up with a list of things that we would like to implement immediately. One of the things that I want to really emphasize is this situation in its entirety is not directly proportional to its full extent as it relates to the drought. Partially, yes, I think we can all agree with that. To answer your question about consumption, and it was a really busy weekend, it was 74 degrees, and for those 4 days we used right at 1 million gallons a day. And we usually use about 600,000 gallons a day. So that we really got it. We were here the weekend, it was really, really busy. Very, very busy. But what we have proposed is we set up that hearing date, and then we come back with a list, and hopefully between now and then we can meet with the Water Conservation Ad Hoc Committee with Director Rice and Director Robinette, and come up with some things that maybe look outside the scope of the municipal code and the surcharges. But again, and I think Director Cliff really touched on this, is that we're partially. It really comes down to basin management and being able to run the wells. And so again, I want to in part explain, and hopefully I probably didn't do a good job explaining, but we historically like to start the SR4 well in March, and we did have that catastrophic failure of the filter media. And so we started that well significantly later. My notes say here that we started it actually in June. So there was about a 3 or 4 month period that we historically are able to run that well. So at that time we were running the San Simeon aquifer, running the San Simeon wells. And I've talked to staff and some of the water operators that have been here for a while, and if you look at the current well levels in the San Simeon, you'll see that they're at 3.1 feet. They believe that if we were able to run the SR4 well earlier, they would be probably 4 feet higher than they are now. So I think that's really important to know, and because we had that mechanical failure. So the San Simeon would be a little bit higher, but that's regardless of everything. I think that we all agree that we need to take some kind of action, and that's what I'd ask the board to meet on the 19th. And just I'm frustrated too. I think I'm frustrated at the fact that we haven't come up with a water alternative for the community. You know me personally, I like to get things done, and I get frustrated when things don't get done. And with that, I'd like to apologize for my initial comment may have been misunderstood. This is a big deal. Water is a big deal, drought is a big deal. What I meant is not to overreact to our current situation. And I wrote this down that's why I'm reading it. But instead that, as Director Robinette said, we need to approach this issue calmly and choose the most effective conservation measures and manage our supply as effectively as possible. And so with that,
General Manager, I don't agree with you. I think that we're in an emergency. I don't think that a committee is a logical way to go. We've been balancing these offers very carefully. I've talked to Jim Adams and our present people. And it's a year, we do this year after year after year. It's successful. I believe we'll be successful again. But each time we do it, especially when we're talking about pumping 1 million gallons and having about 2 months worth of water left, I think that it's much more of an emergency. I tend to think that there's a couple of things we can do immediately. One, our bills are going out tomorrow. So I would like to include in those bills a statement that if we were to adopt surcharges, that the public would know that such a surcharge may, if legally possible, be enforced starting this billing period. So September, October, we would be able to hopefully get some people at least to know that it's a dire situation moving forward. I would go so far as to ask if the U.S. Army could drop a modular desal facility in Grayfield and recharge the groundwater and or provide emergency service. We have $7 million worth of grant money already that could be appropriated to make that happen. And at least if nothing else, if a phone call to Lois Cap's office doesn't happen tomorrow, I think tomorrow's a little late, I think this afternoon would be a good time to see if in fact the Army has resources available to put something in within the next 4 weeks. Even if we didn't use it, at least it's there in case we can't use this anymore. Also, I think we should apply for an emergency coastal development permit to activate a modular desalination unit at the San Luis Springfield for groundwater replacement and for emergency domestic use. Perhaps in the permit we can ask for 4 months worth of use for this year and the next 2 subsequent years while we get a storage option or while we perfect the environmental impact. I tend to think we can call on the Chambers Group and RBF consultants to make sure that the mode of operation for the period is within environmental standards. And if somebody says, did you study this? I'm sorry. They're due to give us a report in January. And for us to come up with an RO unit that we use in the San Luis Springfield for this emergency 4-month period could also be used as an RO unit to treat our wastewater effluent later on. We just change the cartridges. Such a unit is available for less than $1 million. It includes, if it happens to be, I happened to talk to the guy on Friday, he can deliver it in 8 weeks. It's 240,000 gallons per day, and including the equipment, the consumables, it's less than $1 million. And we have it here in 8 weeks. So now, instead of killing the fish or getting saltwater intrusion, we have an emergency piece of equipment in place and that we can use for other uses down the line. And I think that it's an emergency. I think we would declare it. If the Coastal Commission weren't to grant such a permit because they don't want to save the fish, or because they want saltwater intrusion, or another excuse, I think as a district, in an emergency situation, we must save our water supply. And that's my position. I don't know if we can direct you to look into that between now and the 9th, or you can bring back the results of such a query, but I think it would be worthwhile.
Let me ask a question under the. I don't think that we could get that equipment through the Army Corps of Engineer process within 8 weeks because it'll take them 9 months to do a scoping period of time. I think we would have to be prepared to pay the tab and do that. Now, Paso Robles right now is supplementing the Salinas River. So Paso Robles pays for Nacimiento water that they can't use because their filtration system isn't upgraded enough to use it. They're working on that. But in the meantime, what they have done is they've I talked to the mayor over there, and they got a permit from Fish and Game, and they are supplementing, they're basically taking the Nacimental water and they're spreading it in the Salinas River to add to the Salinas River, so that water isn't just, it's going into the ground to help the groundwater basin, but it's also helping the Salinas River situation. It seems to be that if we had, I think people have seen this before, there was a 1990 study of a RO unit hooking to existing wells that we have, and then simply projected to put the water back into the creek bed, because the creek bed has the greatest absorption. So it would actually add to the creek flow, but would also add to the underflow situation there, where you're just recycling water around. And that might be a possibility where if you could get a unit in that period of time, you could fall within maybe a 4-month period to supplement that. And if it's only, I mean, if it's $1 million, it's $1 million. But the way we're going with the Army Corps of Engineers, we're going to spend a lot more than $1 million. And
I wasn't thinking of the Army Corps of Engineers. I was talking about the U.S. Army buying and saving the day. That's what they love doing. They don't like doing things.
Yeah, I don't.
We could ask. Nonetheless, I think that there would be, General Manager, if you were to have an RO unit here 2 years from now, could you make use of it? And if you could make use of it then, why don't we do it now? And have something in 8 to 10 weeks that we could use. Hopefully we don't need to, but I'll tell you, for the insurance, for $35 a citizen, I think, is what it would cost to buy that insurance. That's where the $1 million would be consumed in 1 year in this town.
I'd like to ask council if under the 350 water emergency, do we have any powers for emergency operations such as being talked about here? Just if we don't, then let's find out.
Can I chime in?
Sure, but before we ask council, because I don't think it's council's responsibility to say no, but yes, Ms. Brother.
Well, first of all, what I have been talking about too is I agree with everyone. I think we have a serious issue right now, and I hope not to be misunderstood on this. I don't mean committees that go on for months. I think we have to have very, very soon, if we're going to have a second meeting, we need it by then. We need some viable options that we know how much they're going to cost, we figure how it's going to get paid for, and we look at what could be actually provided. Some of the ideas we were both talking about this morning, but I just think we need a little more information on them. But there's no question in my mind, we have got to put this to rest. We have to put this to rest tomorrow, good, or later this afternoon, but that's not going to happen that way. But we can't go on this way.
I just have a question about the scheduling. Is there a reason why we would wait till the 19th? Is there a specific, we have to have 10 days between this meeting and that meeting or something?
There is. The procedure we're utilizing is under the Water Code Section 375 at SEC, which requires a public hearing before you address and implement enhanced conservation measures, including surcharges and penalties. And that was the focus of this particular meeting. It's the two-step process. Direct staff to notice the public hearing and then come back and look at comprehensive conservation measures. If we're directed, of course, we'll look at other issues, and that would be enhanced water supply, emergency water supply alternatives. They're two separate issues, but certainly could be combined at a meeting on the 19th if that's the direction that the board chooses.
Do we have to wait till the 19th because we have a 10-day between this and that, or I'm just asking why the 19th?
It's a 7-day window actually for publication, and that accounts for the time it's required to prepare the notice and distribute it to the appropriate newspapers. We could certainly have a meeting before then and address some of these same issues. We were trying to keep it directly within the parameters established by both our code and the water code.
I thought that our ordinance on surcharges that we have in place right now, that Chapter 4, that covers Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3 on implementing surcharges, I thought that was put in place under the Water Code 375 when we did that originally, and so we wouldn't have to do it again because we could rely on that ordinance directly. We still have to go through the 375 process to implement, or we can just implement the ones that we have on the books. Can you clarify that, please?
Sure. The three times we saw this, 2002, 2007, and 2008, they didn't utilize the procedures in the municipal code. And that's largely because, at least under today's standards, they don't really reflect adequately the circumstances under which we're now operating. The model under your stage 1, 2, and 3 doesn't account for SR4, and it actually, if you look at it, it's quite archaic. And that also includes the conservation measures themselves. We want to go well beyond what's set forth in the municipal code and look at the techniques and methodologies that really weren't even invented at the time this code was adopted. So that's the purpose of it, and we could certainly expedite and try to do it quicker. We were just being safe in terms of procedures that are set forth both in our code and in the water code.
And if you didn't jump again, I'm sorry. Just one last thing. I completely agree with what Director Barringer said about surcharges not having any effect for at least 4 months, especially if we don't bill monthly. That was one of the recommendations that the Citizens Committee made, was that in a situation where we might have to do surcharges, one of the first steps would be to go to monthly billing, even though it's more expensive, because it gives people better information and there's a faster reaction time. If we implement surcharges right now, it's not going to be until people get their bills in November that they even see that they would have surcharges to react to. So the amount of water savings from surcharges is unlike, other than just letting people know, there's no actual bill they're going to get that says that they have now, had an extra $1,000 for them to cut back, to trigger them to cut back.
We did plan on putting a mailer out in the bills. We're already one step ahead of you on that one. And as District Council Carmel pointed out, the municipal code as it relates to surcharges and the different stages, like a lot of our municipal code is really not as good as it should be. And that's why staff wants to come back with some alternatives. Even some of the alternatives that were identified by one of the speakers that spoke with regards to the Department of Water and Power and things like that. So if anything, through this exercise, we understand too that portion of the municipal code relating to water shortages, emergencies, and stages needs to be also looked at in the future. So we don't come across, here's our alternatives and this is what we're limited to. We would like to come back based on some of the information that's been provided to us today and come back with that laundry list. And just a quick, SR4 was at 2.87, it's at 2.98 now, it's trending upward, and I'm text messaging Mike to see if the San Simeon is at 3.10 to see if it's come up, so I think that's important in helping the board make some decisions on the 19th. But I know you disagree with me
Well, no, I don't. I think we need to bring this meeting back and come up with some, I'd entertain, I don't know if I need a motion, but I'd entertain some specific issues that we direct staff to come back with. And I'm suggesting September 19th. I know Director Rice might be out of town, but I know Director Thompson will be back. And I think we can address many of these issues well. So if someone
I would only say on the date, I also won't be available on the 19th.
Is there a date that week or earlier?
But as long as we have a quorum, I think that it's that important, and if all the board would like to be present, which is really hard, but if we had a quorum, I would be happy with moving forward and and feel confident that, from what I'm hearing today, that the board really is all on the same page with regards to what we may or may not want to do.
Do we have any other dates? We had asked this question earlier, that did we have to have it 10 days or could we have it sooner? I would prefer we had it sooner.
How long is that whole week included?
I'm going 16th through the 18th and the morning of the 19th.
Okay. And the 20th is there? On the
20th would be fine.
In the interim, what we're going to continue to do is monitor the wells, provide that information on an ongoing basis to the board and the community. I really appreciate your comment about the link in the PDF. I've had several people say that through their browser that they can't access the information, and hopefully that was helpful today. I'll make sure, but we'll keep you abreast of what's going on, and I think that.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make one other comment. Mr. Greshams, what's the difference between where we may run out, like how many acre feet are we talking about between, let's just say, for sake of argument, that the amount of water that we say we can get out of there, we can. What's the difference between what you think the demand will be? How many acre feet are we talking about being off?
Well, for the 2-month period of September, October, we estimate demand about 120. And we estimate supply in San Luis 101, so about 19 acre feet.
So we're looking at 19 acre feet. Okay. So, well, hopefully we would shoot beyond the 19 acre feet. But I'm thinking maybe one of the things we could immediately do is aim for the low hanging fruit, whether it's businesses or residential, those high users, those top 25 users, and go in immediately and just face to face talk to those businesses and say, look, we're in a situation, because 20 acre feet is nothing to sneeze at, but it's also something we might be able to get if we actually address those high users immediately, which is why a well-trained conservation specialist would be a great person to have right now, so we could actually go in and just straight up do that. But it would be good, maybe even just the general manager, district engineer, somebody over there, talk to those high users and say, look, we're really in a bind right now. We really need to push this and find out what we can maybe do immediately with those specific folks.
Could I have anyone possibly support investigating the purchase and delivery of a emergency decel unit, and/or could we direct Mr. Hirsch to see how what an emergency permit request would take? Let me ask Mr. Hirsch.
David's a little more handsome.
Oh yes, that's right.
Just based on the conversation, we're going to go ahead and agendize both issues. We'll agendize the conservation measures and additionally any emergency supplies that staff can start to investigate now and come back to some options.
This is what I'm hoping for when we come back, that we look at some very immediate options that we could choose from in case the worst could happen, that we literally run short without panicking, but that it needs to be something that when we come back on the 20th, we do have costs, we do have how long would it take to actually put online or be available. And I don't know what all of that's going to include on that list, but we do need to look at all the possibilities available to us to make some decisions, at least on a first step.
There are some immediate opportunities, I think, that we can take place, and I've done this for many, many years in conservation, and we did it up in Big Bear. And there's some immediate things that would represent a significant savings. And if you're talking 20 acre feet, if I did the math right, 7 million gallons, but I'm not an engineer, and that's the immediate issuance of no outdoor watering. The no outdoor car washing, all those things are a part of the standard conservation program, and you can implement those things in a relatively easy motion by the board and implement them, that would save a significant amount of water. But you know, we need to look at the list, and we'll come up with, we're going to have a conservation meeting this afternoon with staff, and although I don't want to stick just to the DMMs, I want to look outside what the DMMs are.
See, I'm talking about what Director Behringer was referring to. And while the conservation things certainly are important, I think that we're talking about some other backup types of things beyond conservation. We have to look further than conservation.
And I would ask that I get a copy of, appreciate your research into that, and we'll get a copy of the information you have. And I know that past President McKinnon had some information, Alan McKinnon, on some portable units, and then I would ask District Council to look into the permitting side of it. We can do the technical side of it. There are portable units all over the place, and I'm hearing loud and strongly that that's an alternative that you want to. I would support not waiting on the Army Corps of Engineers. If that's the direction the board wants to go, we've got $1 million in reserve, and we can do it.
We have the money in the reserves. When I talked to Stan on Friday, and this is from Mr. McKinnon, what he's talking about also includes an operator. I mean, this is turnkey. He'll operate it for 4 months for that price. The only thing that's not there is the electricity. By the way, on the app, it changes cubic feet to acre feet and gallons. By the way, if you want to get that.
So we're looking at a 20 acre feet short of what you have.
I just happened to have been 6 weeks ago. I was on a ship. I never went on a cruise ship before. But it was not that big of a ship. And they had some statistics. They made 185,000 gallons of portable water every day. Where did they get the water? Anyway,
is there a reason why we wait till the 20th and not do it by the end of this week? I mean, this meeting was a quick turnaround. I'm just curious.
Wait till 20, you mean do something at the end of this week?
If I may, I mean, we can do it whenever you want, but I'd rather give you I don't think the world's going to come to an end in the next 6 or 7 days. And I know I got some chuckles out there, but I rather work with staff and maybe work with the conservation and come back with some meaningful things. You know, we have a tendency to kind of, I'd rather bring you a good product and wait an extra couple days and do it.
And I think that there's enough direction given. But we're going to have the meeting. And if there's enough information, or if the information is good enough, we should be able to act on it at that time. And then they can take action on these other things if they want. So all we have to do is say, you want to pull the trigger on this, you want to do that?
I suggested a meeting on the 20th.
20th, yes.
On the 20th.
Is that possible?
As far as I'm concerned.
It's okay.
So directed, is that the way we end the meeting?
And can I just, I'm sorry, last thing. If for some reason our wells go, again, we will meet before the end of the week.
Yeah, and
if something comes up that it becomes even more dire.
Yeah, I'm an optimist, and I know
Me
you.
too.
But I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist that the SR. I'm an optimist that WBE was going to get to 3 feet. I see it trending upward from 2.87. Although I know I'm an optimist it's going to hit 3 feet and we can run the SR4 well. I'm an optimist that the San Simeon will go up above 3.110. But yes, if something happens, you will be the first to know.
Okay, great. Cliff?
Thank you.
And I would suggest that any thing that you bring back in this period of time be something that's doable. And by that I mean, I think ultimately down the road off-stream storage might be something that's doable, but it's not doable within a week or 2 or a month or 8 weeks. So I don't want you to spend your time on those kinds of things. And I might throw one other thing in. The suggestion is that somehow the only water that's available right now is probably wastewater or some form of that, because you can't just, if we don't have water in the wells, we don't have water in the wells. You can't pump it out and put it someplace. So one of the things that we are doing is, I think the county is using an ag well near that monitoring well for Shamel Park.
Yeah, we touched base with them and they turned that off. That was one of the things that we were concerned about, the impact it may have on a WBE. Now, the WBE well is right outside the parameter of the wastewater plant. You'll see it. You'll see it. You'll see it right there. We marked it, and we put a digital analog in there. I don't want to bore you with the details, but instead of measuring the tape measure, we have real-time data now on that well. But the ag well is the ag well at the park that you're referring to is turned off and has been for some time.
With that, I think that concludes the special meeting business number 3A. I'd like to adjourn the closed session. Where's closed session? Any other?
What time is the meeting?